You're listening to Excellence Above Talent, a podcast where we have the hard conversations about the lives of men and what leads us to achieve greatness and suffer defeat. Hear from other men's journeys as well, as we all learn and grow together to become inspirations to ourselves and those around us. And now your host, Aaron Thomas.
What's up, my beautiful people? This is Aaron Thomas with Excellence Above Talent. Excellence Above Talent is a lifestyle. This is a podcast where we're going to talk about all things lifestyle of men, how we as men can be better for ourselves as well as for our families. It's a podcast where we are going to hold men accountable for their actions, and we try to and want to push people to be their best self. So, a little about me. I was born and raised in Odessa, Texas. I went to OHS, best high school out here in Odessa. I joined the Army in 2005. I did 3 years. I did one tour in Iraq from 2005 to 2006. I got out. I got my bachelor's in business management. Worked for the oil field for a little bit and then decided to do something different. And I applied for a position at the Crisis Center of West Texas. So I wasn't 100% sure what I was getting myself into, but the Crisis Center of West Texas transformed my life for the better. So the position I applied for was the BIP facilitator. BIP stands for Battle Risk Intervention and Prevention Program. And so essentially, my job was to deal with people who've been abusive in their relationships, mostly men. In the beginning, I had only a men's class, but kind of towards the end, we started doing one women's class. So we had conversations. We talked about how to build trust, how to communicate, how to deal with insecurities. We talked about, the different forms or types of abuse, the roles that men play in their home. We talked about, as men, do we put on a mask to hide what it is that, we really feel? And if so, why? We talked about sex. We talked about porn because I think that plays a big role in as to why men do what they do. So this podcast is just going to be a lifestyle podcast where I'm going to bring people in and we're going to sit and talk about the state of manhood, and is it going in the right direction? And if it is, why? And if it's not, why? And I just want to bring up topics and talk about things that I feel like a lot of men want to talk about, but they're afraid to talk about. So hopefully with this podcast, it'll create a space where they will begin to have that conversation with themselves or with their spouse. And this podcast is also created to, provide clarity for women as to why men do the things that they do. I am just a regular guy that sees an issue and want to bring awareness to it. So there are some stats that I've looked up that are alarming to me, And I feel that there is another pandemic that's going on in the United States and no one's really talking about, and that's the state of manhood. And here are some stats that really kind of put me down this path of wanting to create a space for men. So the suicide rate for men is crazy. So men are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than women. It's not that women don't try to commit suicide. It's just that when men commit suicide, they put a gun to their head and they pull the trigger, and you can't really come back from that. There's 132 suicides a day in the United States. Another reason why I started this podcast was because I am a vet, and this stat really hurts me the most. 22 vets commit suicide a day. And I had a friend who committed suicide, and it rocked me to my core. It devastated me. It hurt me so bad because he had called me and we were talking about life, and he was having a hard time, and I was telling him to come out here to Odessa because Odessa is oil field country, and there's a lot of money to be made here in Odessa if you come out here and put the work in. So I was talking to him about talking to him about like, if you come out here, you can stay with me for a couple of months until you get on your feet. And he had asked me for some money, and I tried to send it, but they sent it back saying something about fraud. And that was the last time I talked to him. And this guy was one of the coolest guys I knew. So when I went to Iraq, I was 19 years old. As a Cav Scout, so I was light infantry. So we went on numerous missions, and this guy was one of the happiest guys. He helped me through a lot of dark times in Iraq because he was just so happy and motivated, and anytime I was down, I would look to him, and he was smiling and making jokes and creating a space where you're comfortable in a place where there's a lot of death. There's a lot of gunfire, and people getting blown up and people getting shot. And he was one of the people that I looked to for peace. And I think it tore me up the most because I couldn't be that person for him in his darkest moment. But I also didn't see or hear his tone, and I guess I didn't know what to listen to whenever he had called and we were talking. So that's when I started to really think about the state of manhood, and if I could do something to prevent this from ever happening again, what could it be? And it's to bring as much awareness to mental health and the struggles that we as men go through, but I also want to bring awareness to allow men to know that they're not alone in this process. They're not alone in this race. That they're enough, that they're worthy, that, putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger is not the way to go. And I'm only going to say that because I've also I've contemplated suicide before, and I've also attempted it. So it's something that I'm not just talking out of what I saw other people deal with. It's something that I've also experienced and have gone through in my life as well. So when I say the suicide rate is high in men, and I want to find out and figure out, what, we can do as a society to stop that or to prevent it from happening on a basis where, 132 men are dying a day. Well, not 132 men, 132 people are dying a day, but majority of those people are men. And 22 vets commit suicide a day. And so we want to have these conversations to figure out what we can do to prevent that from happening. I also see that there is a lot of violence that we as men do. And I have also been a part of that violence where, because I didn't know how to communicate, I didn't know how to talk, I didn't know how to express how I felt. The only way I knew how to communicate was this raw aggression. I got it out by punching holes in walls, by breaking things, by getting into fights, by screaming and yelling and trying to hurt people's feelings. And so there are some stats that are also alarming to me that I want to bring to the forefront. Over 90% of the prison population is made up of men. Over 75% of the DUIs arrests that happen are men. 76% of the domestic violence cases, men are involved. 91% of the sexual assault cases, men are involved. 96% of the mass shootings that happen in the United States are done by young men or just men in general. And so I also want to bring awareness, or to just bring it up, to have the conversation as to what we can do to prevent this violence from happening, because I have gone to schools and I've gone to the youth detention center, and this violence is very present in our young kids right now. There are young kids, 15, 16, 17-year-olds taking lives. There are 10-year-olds coming in there with sexual assault convictions where, they assaulted someone younger than them. And so there's a lot of violence that is happening with our young kids and also with our, older adults. And this is just my assessment, my opinion. We're trying to mask all this pain. We're trying to mask, this hurt, this trauma that we've all been through. And there isn't an outlet, or we assume there isn't a positive outlet. So we bottle it all in, and then it explodes. And it's usually not the people that we don't know. We usually explode on the people that we say we love, like our wife and our kids, or our girlfriend. And so bringing awareness to where this violence is coming from and having that conversation of what we can do to prevent this next generation of growing up how I grew up, and stopping them from just, being violent without trying to find an outlet or communicate, what's really going on with them. So, again, this is a lifestyle podcast. This is a podcast where we're going to talk about everything from, from men's health to insecurities to how to deal with jealousy, how to build trust, how to communicate in a positive and productive way to where we're not, throwing things at walls or punching holes in walls. We're going to be talking about, porn, and we're going to be talking about the different types of abuse, because I think that's a big thing that a lot of men don't know. So when I started working at the crisis center, I thought I was a good person. I thought I was a good man. I thought that I was decent. But the more I started to learn about myself at the crisis center, I realized that I wasn't a good person, that I was an asshole, and I thought I was, and I thought I wasn't, but learning about the different types of abuse, learning about, how you can manipulate someone into making them do something, and, the power and control wheel is a big thing for a lot of men. We want to create a space where we feel we have power and control over the people that's in our lives. And that is such a negative way of living. And it creates a lot of animosity and a lot of space to really become, physically abusive, because people who are abusive don't just walk up to someone, say, I like you, and then smack them in the face. It just simply doesn't happen. It happens it happens over time, where someone doesn't, communicate correctly and they get angry, or an insecurity pops up and they don't have that conversation with themselves as to why they have that insecurity, and so they begin to blame their spouse, and they start to say, mean things to them first, verbally, mentally, trying to screw with their head. They gaslight them, which is they tell them that they didn't do something that they did, and they know that the spouse saw them do it, but they still are going to lie and say that it wasn't them. It's kind of like the Shaggy song, when he's like, she caught me on a sofa, and it wasn't me. Caught me on the counter, it wasn't me. In the shower, it wasn't me. And so you're gaslighting that person to make them think that they're crazy. And so that's something that we do, and we don't think it's a form of abuse, but it is. And so we want to have these conversations. We want to talk about, ways that we can be better men, because I see men, and I've talked to men who want an outlet, and who's looking for an outlet, and who's looking for a place where they can learn about themselves and talk about their issues and grow and become better men for themselves as well as for their family. And so this is the space I'm hoping that we can create as a community to make men better. So, if anyone hasn't told you today that they love you, let me be the first to say I love you. You are amazing. You are enough. You are worthy. You deserve the best that this world has to offer. Do not give up. Do not quit, because I promise you life does get better in the end. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And for daily motivational and up-to-date content, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Excellence Above Talent. And remember, keep moving forward, never give up, and you are never alone in this battle. We'll see you next time.